Hello, welcome to this month's Natural Vision Support Group. We're here in May 2022, and we were just chatting before we started the recording about the new episode of the Naked Eye podcast that I just put out yesterday, where I interviewed Gloria Ginn, actually the author of this great book, Free Your Mind to Improve Your Eyesight. And we talk about not only that, but there's a big focus on shifters. That's her newest book, is a little bit more about using these shifters to improve our vision as well. Just a little backstory. I had recorded this interview back in February, and we did the video along with it so that she could actually show and demonstrate some of the practices and the tools that we're talking about. But my hard drive crashed and the video file was lost, but the audio was saved. So I was still able to put out the podcast, but I kind of wanted to sort of fill that out today in this class to actually implement and demonstrate the different ways that we were talking about using shifters and just the phenomenon of shifting in general. So there's kind of an order that we can go through today of starting off with some closed eye shifting using our fingers, or if you have a type of a slot shifter, or Gloria calls it the sun shifter, because we're going to actually be using a light to stimulate. But we can also use our fingers if you don't have that kind of tool. And then we're going to transition into more of the opaque shifters, like the Picket fence shifter. And if you don't have this, I'll also show you a couple alternatives to use using a book, or once again, using your fingers. But then ultimately, we're going to be exploring how to take that off of a tool and into our real world, because there's actually a lot of opportunities for us to be shifting on things that already exist in our spaces. Before we try any of the practices and use the tools, we just want to first of all lay the groundwork of the fact that shifting is a good thing. Shifting is a sign of a healthy eye. These little tiny movements of the eyes, as opposed to staring, which is kind of the opposite of shifting. When we stare, usually the tension or the muscles around the eyes actually have strain to prevent the shifting. So the shifting is something that your eyes naturally want to do, but somewhere along the line, we may have learned how to stare and sort of override that shifting, where the eyes become very motionless. And when they do move, it becomes kind of sluggish or slow, or it might even feel kind of tiring or exhausting. I know when I first learned about shifting and reading about how important it is and how the healthy eyes are moving all day long, honestly, I felt like, wow, that's going to be draining. It's going to take a lot of energy for me to maintain. But that was kind of the wrong way of thinking about it. In truth, this is completely sustainable and relaxing for your eyes to do all the time. It's actually the staring and the straining that is taxing, and it just zaps your energy. But until we continue to actually let go of the stare and replace it with the shifting, sometimes it feels the opposite, and we actually feel good about staring. So hopefully by the end of our class today, you'll be feeling less on the staring side and more on the shifting side. So let's just jump right into it in terms of starting to feel what we're talking about, not just talking about it or thinking about it, but actually experiencing it. Keep in mind, though, that these little saccadic movements, by definition, are microscopic. These are little microadjustments. And so we're going to try lots of different ways to stimulate that today to see if we can actually tune into that. Some people they're more sensitive to it and they can feel the little vibration starting to happen. Other people are maybe not so sure, like, is it actually happening or not? But maybe actually before we try it together, maybe I can just demonstrate, and maybe it'll show up on the camera of how my eyes shift as I go across the picket fence shifter. So all I'm doing is I'm swinging my head in the opposite way. I'll just slow it down a little bit. I'm going the opposite direction. So the pickets go to the right, my head and my eyes go to the left. Pickets go to the left, my eyes go to the right. But as opposed to if this was just a blank paper and I was going across this side, where it feels kind of smoother in my eyes. Maybe they're not really wiggling as much, but when they try and go across this side, it's almost like they're tripping along the way. They're just trying to go smoothly, but these lines are kind of breaking it up. And it creates maybe these more jerky movements where the eyes are kind of jumping from point to point. And I'm not controlling this. I'm not doing anything with my eyes. I'm just doing my best to try and keep them kind of loose and relaxed so that the lines can actually initiate the movement. So I'm speeding it up a little bit, which may create even more of those little shifts. Now, I also want to do it with my eyes closed and remember the lines passing by. And I doubt it shows up on the camera, but what I'm doing is I'm tuning into the feeling of my eyes doing that movement that I was feeling with them open. Because we don't want to close our eyes and just go back into a stare. We want to actually encourage the shifting to continue whether our eyes are open or closed. So if maybe you have a little bit of a sense of what it kind of looks like when the eyes are doing that saccadic movement, we can first just start with the sun shifter or the sun strobing, where ideally you're going to be able to face a window or a light source. So I'm going to do both. I have a window right here and it's a pretty sunny day. I'm also going to turn on my desk lamp here, just so there's two sources of light here. And we're going to have our eyes closed and we're going to be waving our fingers in front of our closed eyelids in any direction you want. You can go side to side, you can go up and down, diagonally. You don't have to move very much. You don't have to go way out to the sides. You can just concentrate it in front of your face, in front of your closed eyes. You do want to have your fingers pretty close to your face. The farther they are from your face, it diffuses the shadow more and it makes the contrast between light and dark less. So we want a lot of contrast. Little caveat before doing this should not be done if you have epilepsy or any kind of sensitivity to seizures or that type of thing, because it does create a flickering light effect when you do the finger movements, or if you have an actual slot shifter where you're moving it side to side in front of your closed eyes, or up and down, or diagonally. Can really play around with the different directions, but the eyes are closed here. So it's not about seeing anything. It's about feeling that change of light as the light flickers. You want to feel that initiating some change in your eye organ. I was in a lesson with a student this morning. We were doing this and he said he couldn't really feel the eyes moving necessarily, but what he described was a jolt in the muscles, a jolt in the eye muscles. So it felt like, it didn't necessarily feel like he was used to moving the eyes around consciously. It just felt like the eye muscles were getting jolted or initiated to create the very subtle adjustment of the eye. So after doing this, we do want to palm, because this is a light therapy type practice. So if you're doing it with light coming into the window or even with an artificial light, after doing some with the fingers or the slot shifter, you want to just cover up both eyes and let all that stimulation and activity that you just gave yourself a chance to kind of sink in and settle in a little bit. And maybe even while palming, we can invite our eyes to be moving. Maybe not very consciously, not like, okay, eyes, move left, move right, move up, move down. That's you maybe overly controlling it. These shifts are meant to be automatic or unconscious. And what I've found that really helps to get my eyes move while palming is to picture moving objects. So I'm going to picture a watermelon, and the watermelon is in a catapult. And the catapult gets released, and the watermelon flies into the air, just rotating through the sky way far away until it splats on the ground and reveals that bright, colorful inside with all the little black seeds. So we load up another watermelon, or maybe we want to put something else in there like a pumpkin or a squash or something, but we're going to fire it off, watch it fly off into the sky, getting smaller and smaller as it goes, and then it splats on the ground. And you just want to notice, does picturing a moving object through a scene, do your eyes follow that? Are they attracted to that flying fruit that's going through the air? Because ultimately, we do not want to palm our eyes and put our eyes in park. That's what I used to do, and that was a little bit of a mistake, to just actually be unaware that I was maintaining a bad vision habit when I was actually trying to improve my eyesight with the palming. So if we can initiate more movement during the palming in a relaxed way, of course, you may actually observe more benefits from the palming, maybe even some more improvements. So we will do a little more palming today, but for now we're going to transition back out to try our different types of shifters. We've started off with having something with spaces, whether it's your fingers and looking through the spaces of your fingers, or if you have a slot shifter or a piece of cardboard with the slots cut out and your eyes are closed to get that flickering light on the eyelids, or your eyes can be open if you're not looking at the light. So we did it with the eyes closed first. So you could do it with the eyes open. For example, if you're looking at your screen, or if you're looking at an eye chart, if you do your finger pickets or your slot shifter with the eyes open, oftentimes that can create some really nice clarity. It's a little counterintuitive because it's like there's this thing getting in front of your face and obscuring what you're looking at, but the shifting that can occur as a result of the moving object, either during the practice or when you stop to practice and you just go back to looking at your chart or looking at your screen, the shifting you've just initiated may actually carry over into a clear flash that is either temporary or might even last a little longer, especially if you feel that you're continuing to shift even on the screen or on the chart. That's where we're headed after we do this next part, is actually applying this onto real objects and things. But for now, I want to just focus in on either the actual black and white picket fence shifter, or an alternative would be to use a book. If you open up any book and hold it sideways, you can kind of compare these two things right now. What they have in common is that they both look like vertical lines of black ink. Now, usually the book is a lot smaller and thinner sections of black ink. This has much darker, thicker, blacker spots, but they can still work the same way. So whether you're moving this side to side to get the shifting, or moving this side to side to get the shifting, where you would hold it up and go across the page. And this is not about reading the book. This is about using the ink on the page to actually stimulate these little shifts or micro movements of the eyes. So you might be wondering, am I supposed to be focusing on the page, or should I be almost like diverging through the page? Because when I do my picket fence shifter like this, side to side, just going back and forth, sometimes I feel inclined to actually focus on the paper. So my eyes are actually sliding across the paper here. But other times I feel like my eyes sort of relax and diverge through the page. So it's almost like I'm not focusing up close. It's almost like if you look at my eyes right now, I'm looking out the window, and now the pickets are just coming in front of my face, and I'm not looking up close. My eyes are just staying diverged. So that can work if that feels good. But sometimes my eyes will converge and actually slide across the page and then jump off the page at the end. So we don't necessarily want to get stuck on the edge and then just move past. We want to get to the edge, go off, and maybe diverge out to a farther target, and then converge on the pickets, and then diverge out to another target. And this is a great opportunity to incorporate your eye charts. Because if you have a chart right over here and you're doing your picket fence shifter, you're going to land on your chart. And then you do the shifter, you land on the chart. And you can either hold the chart up close if you're working on some of your near vision, but if you're working on your far vision, you would probably want it farther away. So if I've got my chart over here, I'm going to be swinging through the pickets, and then landing on my distance chart. So it's like pickets, chart, pickets, chart, pickets, chart. And there's no reason why you couldn't have two charts, one on this side, one on this side. And then you're going chart, pickets, chart, chart, pickets, chart. And it's pretty amazing how when you use it that way, compared to the maybe quote normal way you would look at an eye chart, where you're just looking at the chart straight ahead and kind of working with it and staying on it. When you're leaving the chart, doing lots of shifting, and then you come back and land on the chart, boom, there's a nice clear flash that comes through just for that quick second you land on it, and then you've left it again. So it's almost speeding the process up and trusting the fact that the eyes love to move, and the shifter can help them move a lot as they're going across and then landing on something to focus on. But even when you land on a chart, it's not like you're landing with a stare, right? So you want to land on the chart and then feel like your eyes are still kind of shifting a little bit there, and then you come back across to another point or another chart. But all of this, remember, we don't want to just do it open. We want to also repeat closed. So doing that with the chart, you would be remembering the pickets up close, remembering the chart over there, remembering the pickets up close, remembering the target over there. So then you're incorporating your memory into the process as well. And these are with big shifters. So the big shifters are helpful, and they're usually a good place to start. But I also wanted to call some attention to some small shifters. For example, like a barcode. So like this is pretty much just a shrunken down version of this. And the small shifters tend to be helpful for farsightedness, or when we're working on improving our detail vision up close on smaller letters. So when we're doing it up close, we might, and you can use a business card or a receipt or anything that has a barcode on it, or a QR code, or even just fine print works as well, kind of like we did with the book. But you might want to do it one eye at a time when you're doing it up close, and maybe moving this barcode like very close to the eye and traveling up and down, maybe doing a little side to side, maybe trying a little bit with the other eye. When we do things one eye at a time, it's essentially reducing any kind of stress or strain associated with convergence. If we do it very close with both eyes, especially if you have any difficulty with convergence, it may not feel comfortable to have it so close. and the eyes having to converge to do that. But like I said, with the diverging through the paper chart, you could technically stay in the distance focus and have it pass by in the foreground. But I think it is a good practice to work on getting better at converging on things closer and closer and just going through that little barcode. After we do some shifting and stimulating, like we did after the sun strobing, we also want to take another quick palming break as we're doing all this movement and essentially asking the eyes to increase their activity, which once again, at first may sound like work, but this type of activity is natural for your eyes. It's essentially what your eyes want. So let's do a short little visualization here where we pretend that we are flipping a switch in our head, and it's a vibrate switch. So when you flip the switch, your eyes, you're imagining that your eyes start to vibrate, kind of like when your phone is in vibrate mode. It's not like your phone is flying across the room, it's staying still, but it's buzzing. So if you flip that switch off, you imagine that the vibration kind of stops and maybe the eyes are back in that kind of staring parked mode. And then you flip the switch on and that just initiates something, whether it's imaginary or physical. You might feel your eyes start to wiggle or vibrate in some way, some new way. And then you switch it off and just notice if you can feel any difference. We're just sort of comparing and contrasting. But if you've picked up on the theme today, we essentially want to start switching that vibration mode on more. So let's switch it on. Imagine the eyes vibrating or buzzing or shifting in however way feels good for you. And we're going to just invite that to continue as we come back out of palming. So even though your palms leave your face and you eventually blink your eyes back open, we're still imagining that the eyes are vibrating or in this state of perpetual motion where they just are not very happy when they're forced to stay on one spot for too long. So this is sort of where the practice takes us, is off of the tools. So instead of using the fingers, instead of using the slot shifters, instead of using the books or the barcodes or the picket fence shifters, now we're going to look around our room and see if we can find any examples of patterns or things that we can use as shifters, as a little reminder throughout our day to stay moving. So I'm going to kind of open it up to the group to see if anybody has anything they want to share or show, a little show and tell of some shifters that you may already have in your space that you maybe weren't super aware of. So essentially, we're looking for vertical lines, horizontal lines, diagonal lines.